Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MPE Summer Week. Please join us in welcoming the chairman of the program for Day 2, Martin Koderich.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to this session. So, whatever I say to introduce the impact of coronavirus on our lives this year will probably be an understatement. 2020 has been an extraordinary year and it's still not over. It will be remembered for many things, including that global shift to e-commerce. Great for some online retailers, but not so great for others with physical shops. So, my name is Martin Koderich. I'm a principal at Edgar Dunn Consulting. I'm your moderator for this session. And in this session, we're going to explore how digital payment transformation can support retailers and their customers through the pandemic and beyond. We have a great keynote presentation and then followed by a panel discussion. So let's get started with the presentation. So I'd like to introduce Yuval Ziff from Nuvei. Over to you, Yuval.
My name is Yuval Ziv, Managing Director of Digital Payments in Nuvei. I'm 14 years with the group and managing the expansion into digital and globally from different geographies. I'm happy to be here and to share with all of you a little bit about our trends and what we see as an intel from the pandemic period and the shift both on retailers but also on shoppers and the expectations moving forward post-COVID, post-pandemic, whenever that period will be over. So first I will start with a short introduction of who Nuvei is. We are in the business for 19 years already, processing payments. We are a digital partner for payments globally for merchants out there, online and offline, that would love to either process domestically or explore the international cross-border. With more than 800 employees worldwide, 18 different offices from Shenzhen in the east all the way to the US, throughout offices in Europe, across the entire EU, basically. We are processing more than 500 million of annual transactions and 40 billion of value, with more than just credit card and debit card. Credit card, debit card is the most common, the most straightforward, but however, more than 150 different local currencies served by more than 400 different alternative payment options. To those of you in Germany, you know better than anyone else, the GiroPay, Sofort, Überweise, and Klarna, and many others are serving better than credit card and debit card, and it very much depends not only on location, but also on the shopper's experience. And shopper's experience is what we are all about now today, when we are looking at the shift of the differences, the shift of the different users and their preferences while shopping online, or also in what left to it, the shopping offline. I will start with approaching a pandemic in a little bit of memories. We'll take one step backwards before the COVID that we are all recognizing very well, bringing us back into the 2003 SARS. In most of the world, most of us, yes, we've recognized that such a pandemic happens, but the effect of the pandemic on the entire life was limited, at least in the side of Europe and the US, North America. It was very much experienced that China overcome in a way that influenced not only their day-to-day and prepared them to the next pandemic, to COVID, but also made a trademark on the way that they manage payments. Actually, during the SARS pandemic, this was the initial steps of Alibaba that launched Taobao, maybe by far the fastest growing back then, the fastest growing trend of moving from offline, all of those small shops, into online transaction, into online e-commerce website. Also, Alipay helped to solve all the differences or the difficulties of payment. Instead of accepting the payment offline, how to make it as fast, as streamlined, and accept it also online. And obviously, JD.com, that became a mega marketplace later on, was launched, all of it due to pandemic. So what we do recognize is that both retailers and shoppers are having some sort of a shift or a change in preferences during such times. Fast forward into 2020 and the pandemic of the COVID-19, we have seen it much broader now, worldwide experience with a creation of a need of innovation and a use or a wider move or shift from the offline into digital. And it can be from any different store out there that shifted his own preference or his own offering from the offline store into the online, or it can be also consumer that changed also their preference in their, not only in what they are buying, but also in the way that they are buying. We have seen and recognized the obvious changes of moving into contactless. So users that are trying to keep their social distancing and trying to accept payment, to pay, but to accept the goods without any touch with the delivery or with the seller. We've seen it happening in moving into in-app payments, and we've seen it in many other alternatives of payments that comes and replace the standard selling of products into a shift of a preference of subscription or installments or buy now and pay later. All of those financing methods of payment and means of payments has been dramatically accelerated. The changes into digital, it's accelerated during the COVID. Anyhow, even before COVID, the preference were different between location. If we're looking at Canada, this is a market where 2/3 of the shoppers are paying with credit card, unlike the UK, where the majority is actually debit card. Italy, another country within more or less the same continent, so you can expect more or less the same behavior as in UK, but actually the prepaid, the PayPal, the wallets are way more significant in market share compared with UK or many other locations within Europe. What we've actually seen is that the different preference in payment methods has accelerated the different change in behavior also during the pandemic. So if we've looked at the prepaid cards, or in the locations where the wallet has been significantly bigger in share than credit card and debit card, then we've seen suddenly more of delaying of purchases that are not needed or not necessarily mandatory at a certain minute or at this period. However, where credit card, debit card is commonly used, we've seen that the transaction and the purchases are still ongoing. However, a different means of payment, maybe buy now and pay later, maybe installments, maybe different means are being served in order to still respect the transaction and continue with the purchase. However, search for other means, and this actually makes a lot of sense. Users, shoppers, has lost their confidence, not only from health reasons, from the pandemic and the fears of being in contact with others, but also has lost the confidence from or has entered into an uncertainty period from their financial situation. And they fear that now maybe they should be a little bit more cautious with purchases that are not day-to-day needed. Retailers, some of them has lost their entire business exposure, mainly because they were offline approaching and retail on their main market, and suddenly are looking for ways to explore how to expand the reach. And expanding the reach means, yes, going global and going into the digital, setting up a site, but not all of that is doable in a very short time. And for that, we will touch base on few of the trends that we've seen, both on payment methods and on technologies that we've seen that served well for the retailers and also were adapted very nicely, either by shoppers, either by different organizations. When we are looking at the whole pandemic and the development of the pandemic, then we can look at a few of the stats that definitely make sense. Again, retailers were seeking ways to maintain their business. Some of them had just lost their entire capability to sell offline. They had to go ahead and immediately start selling online, either by capabilities of a complete different set of website, either by technologies that were offered, such as the pay by link, QR codes, and any kind of checkout experience that will allow the user still to transact without visiting the shop. Many of the retailers have started adapting by offering broader scope of products. I've seen some retailers that started cross-selling and upselling capabilities with different stores that until these days they were not even offering those products, and all of that in order to attract more users into their stores. Some of our clients have actually started approaching global markets. So they had a website, they had also an offline store that they were selling in both of them, but they should have, or during the COVID and because of the COVID, they started actually targeting countries. So adding additional payment methods, additional currencies, additional languages into the whole shopping experience had to be served briefly, quickly, and we had to help some of our merchants to go live with those increased exposure, not only to handle the transaction, but also post-transaction. How do you reconcile all the currency? How do you make sure that you are getting the goods without any kind of shipping the goods without any kind of delay for the users? All of those change of behaviors has basically been accelerated dramatically due to the COVID. On shoppers' experience, on the consumers, we've seen also significant change in preferences. In terms of goods being sold online, so we've seen significant move or shift into the groceries online, into the do-it-yourself or renovation products that we've seen increase. However, obviously, the travel, hotels, airlines have suffered from the decrease, and also were in a need to address significantly the credit risk from the exposure of chargebacks, cancellation, or postponing until the whole period will be changed back. We've also seen on the shopper side an increase of the capability to transact online, or being comfortable, the security of transacting online, which basically means, at least from the service that we've done, that the change that's been accelerated by the pandemic is not only a temporary change of practices or temporary change in preferences, but actually a change that will drive moving forward the different preferences of users and the capability or the wish to go ahead and continue selling and buying online. What we've seen, obviously, as part of the working with our merchants, is that they need support. They need support, they need understanding, they need a partner, someone that will help them reach out to the shoppers, maintain the liability within the whole shopping experience, but also allow the users to feel at home, to feel safe to transact, and to make sure that they will continue getting the same level of service that they used to even before. That brought us into a few different understanding. The first one is that we need to facilitate capability of those brick and mortar businesses to go online, to digitalize as much as we can, helping them to continue serving their loyal client base. We had to improve the conversion by building not only the capability of buying, but how do you maintain the loyalty of the users? How do you make sure that the user that is used to come over and to receive a certain level of satisfaction and a certain level of service, how do you help the e-commerce retailer to maintain those loyalty, to maintain the contact between the seller and the shopper, but without physical contact. And obviously how to provide customers with more ways to pay in order to answer the global expansion or increasing the audience that the merchant has to seek. One of the immediate shift that we've done internally is obviously helping merchants out there, and mainly in with the retailers, in coming in, listening to their needs, and coming back with a technology that will allow them to continue accepting payments, continue serving their shoppers, but with an alternative to the traditional POS, to the traditional experience of the offline transaction. We came up with the technology of a pay by link and QR code, allowing any merchant out there, instead of accepting the payments in the terminal, simply to generate either a link, either a QR code within any device. It doesn't matter if it's an iOS device, if it's a different tablet or a different PC, they can generate the pay by link, send it to the user, make sure that the user receives it properly with all the goods already mentioned inside, all the different capabilities in terms of payment methods, in terms of experience, in terms of security, all maintained. The user can basically receive those invitations either by link, either by QR code, generated very briefly from either a control panel, either an API. And once sent, the user can either scan it if it's a QR code, either click on it and be redirected into the payment page, into the checkout page, and pay for the goods. And surprisingly, the initiative was accepted and adopted not only by retailers, but actually by a few of the examples that we have of smart city initiatives. So not only that retailers have shifted their preferences and accelerated and changed their behavior, but also the cities that actually organizing events, especially nowadays during the summer, those cities used to organize events of theaters, swimming pools, but now not only that they need to accept the payments from far away, but also they need to manage the capacity. They cannot accept all the users at once. They need to manage the booking online. And one of the examples that we've seen as a quick adaptation into a smart city and behaving or accepting the behavior of the user, the demands by the user, was actually by the city of Lugano that initiated the smart city in-application payments. We've integrated within the in-application our QR code, pay by link, and also serving any different payment methods. And actually these days, when a user wants to participate in one of the different family or gathering or any kind of event that the city is offering, they can simply log into the web app or to the mobile app. They can choose the different activity. They can basically choose and book online what are the dates and the hours that they want to book, again, in order to serve the maximum capacity that is allowed by the city due to the COVID, and then they are receiving the different notification that they have just booked it. They are adding a card if they decide, or any different means of payment that is relevant to the location, and simply transacting, receiving the ticket online into their inbox, and then capable of obviously enjoying from the opportunity. So it's not only that the retailers and the shoppers have adapted, but we've seen also initiatives such as that, allowing cities to adapt to the different pandemic situation. And as part of the overall trend, we've also been very curious what will happen next. So is it a temporary shift of preferences? Is it something that will last for the long run? And we've recognized it in few different activities. We've recognized it in the travel. Everyone is asking themselves, when are we coming back to travel like we used to? In office spaces, are we seeing or recognizing a complete change of preference of work from home and all the different software of managing the offices? What will happen with companies such as WeWork and offices, buildings that are renting their spaces? Or is it just temporary solution, temporary preference? And what we've actually seen is that the first thing is that the user recognize that those types of changes are actually most likely to be permanent. People might be coming back into the offices, but might also start balancing between their days in the office and the days of work from home. The same moving forward from digital transaction and from the preference of shopping online versus shopping offline. We've seen from merchants, from our retailers coming back to us and telling us that their loyal user base keep on mentioning that actually they got used to the e-commerce revolution to digitalize as much as they can, and they would love to continue. So 93% of spending online, this is the growth that the US have seen only in May. And anyone who is playing a part within the e-commerce, within the digital and the e-commerce field, understand and see that since April all the way till July, till now, we have seen significant increase of e-commerce, and it makes totally sense. And when the users are getting adjusted to it and adapting to the overall online experience, most likely this is some of those trends will be definitely permanent to stay, some will change. Another aspect that were something that we were interested in knowing is what will be actually moving forward, what will be the preference in terms of type of goods or type of online experience. Not only that we've seen that in April and May in the US, just this April and May was accumulated in 12 times higher than a usual Cyber Monday. So those specific transactions or e-commerce part of the overall shopping has increased dramatically. But we've also recognized from our merchants that the ones that shifted successfully from the offline to online, that they actually recognize the benefit of it, reducing some of the cost from the offline management and increasing the exposure into the online. That definitely, from retailers' perspective, this pandemic has seen initially some sort of a panicking reaction, but then once it's over and once the retailers overcome it and started selling online quickly and adapted to the different trends of the users, they are here to stay, they want to continue, and they believe that additional payment methods, additional conversion tools that we will provide them will simply allow them to continue and serving the users successfully and maintaining the loyal client base as they are today. That's all on my end. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuval. Very interesting perspective. So now we're going to switch to the panel discussion, for which Wilco Slabakorn from Afterpay and Ted Hettich from Ideal Home Shopping will join us. So before we dive into the discussion and the questions, let's do a quick round of intros for the new panelists. Wilco and Ted, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. So my name is Wilco Slabakorn. I'm the VP of Global Sales for Afterpay, and that is part of the Arvato Bertelsmann Group. I'm very happy to join the panel discussion.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Ted Hettich. I'm the CSO for Ideal Shopping Direct. Ideal Shopping Direct is a TV broadcaster and traditional UK TV home shopping channel in the UK. Been around for 20 years. We have 2 channels in the UK, and we're on every night on one of the largest private TV channels in the UK, ITV, following the evening movie. So if you're from the UK, you're probably familiar with that. We have 8 million TV viewers every day in the UK, and we're building an online marketplace in the UK and also opening up a brand new digital studio. So great to be here too. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Ted. Actually, you know what? I may start with you, if you don't mind, as our merchant on the panel.
Yeah, sure.
Let's just go back to February, March of this year. You know, what's the journey been like for you as a merchant since then?
Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting ride. Actually, I just made the move over to Ideal in January of this year. So it was, I was expecting something completely different as the year unfolded. And one of the last events, I was actually at the hotel where MPE normally is in Berlin, and we were at ETEL Germany, and Berlin was shutting down the next day. And it completely changed, I think, after that weekend. It changed overnight. And essentially, for us, especially online, we've seen some pretty tremendous growth. It's been up around 35% since the COVID outbreak started. And starting to trickle off now as we go into summer, things are opening up. But we did see it I think it was around May was our high point, where we really saw just a lot of people shifting to digital, going online and buying from our online properties.
Okay, great, interesting. Yeah, well, that's a good, just to set the scene, very interesting. And Wilco, what's what have you observed from an Afterpay perspective in terms of how the retailers have responded?
Yeah, I think Yuval touched on it already. We've seen an enormous, let's say, move and shift from consumers to installment type of products, payment products. So installment plans and buy now, pay later type of purchases. Also for consumers to manage their spendings, basically. And we've seen, and that is also something we also carried out in terms of all different kinds of surveys. We actually found out that in certain sectors, we saw an enormous increase, also due to restrictions in mobility, of course, and people working from home, not being able to shop wherever in store. So we saw a lot of our merchants in either retail with physical stores who had a omnichannel strategy and were successful in digitalization and moving everything online, but also some merchants who were not successful and without any online strategy. And a great example of that is, of course, Primark, right? They saw no sales basically in a few months because they just had to close their stores without an online strategy, right? So that was for us very interesting to follow.
Yeah, I mean, so the theme of this session really is sort of transformation of digital payments. So what have you observed in terms of the kinds of transformation projects and initiatives that retailers have launched during this period since March? What have you seen in terms of transformation? Yuval, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can definitely also relate to what Wilco just mentioned. I think that it depends on those merchants that were already, in a sense, adapted. Maybe even if it's not the majority of the transaction, they were adapting very fast because they always considered either online, either omnichannel as a way moving forward. But actually, I think that the most successful trend that we've seen is for those merchants that were after the first period of shock when the pandemic hit, were very fast on reaction, approaching us, asking us for our awareness and dedication on technology, but also on linking between different capabilities or different partners that we have. And with those type of merchants or retailers, we've actually seen the unique success of either moving and shifting into an immediate site, even if it's a simple site, immediate site for online, for e-commerce transacting, or utilizing alternatives such as pay by link and QR code. I think that these were, on our hand at least, the situation where we felt that the success is at the highest, simply because we've helped a merchant that had no strategy whatsoever on e-commerce into shifting into digital, and it showed not only the great appreciation by the retailers, but also a great success story.
Mm-hmm. Wilco, have you observed something similar? Have you got any examples you can perhaps share?
Yeah, certainly. So we have quite some fairly traditional merchants, especially in the DACH region, in the German region, where e-commerce was on the agenda, right? But it wasn't a day-to-day conversation in the C-suite. And the digital people within those types of companies had quite a tough job in order to influence more traditional leaders of their business. Now, at some point, shops had to close, and all of a sudden, in a very short time frame, these more digital-orientated people became far more important in that organization. And I think what we've seen, and that's also what you can read in all different kinds of reports and analysis from McKinsey, for example, we've seen, I think in 3 months' time, what normally would take 5 years in terms of digitalization, right? So a lot of our merchants have put e-com as high on the agenda as possible, and then even the payments component in this, right? So payments, I always say payments is the 6P in the marketing mix, but this payments concept becomes more and more important in order to increase loyalty with your consumers, because the payment token can be followed wherever you are, right? E-com wise, in-store, etc. So companies who really understand that and understand that payments is a very important part of your loyalty program with consumers, I think that is an extremely valuable takeaway from the past couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just, to echo what you're saying, it's perhaps not just about payments, it's also about loyalty. And I mean, how have merchants been able to manage, loyalty where they perhaps have had physical contact with the customers in the past? What steps are they taking to increase loyalty online?
Yeah, we for example, if I can step in there, we've been actually focusing a lot on digital. And so connecting with our retailers through ad campaigns. TV's always been really strong with us, but basically connecting with our shoppers through email campaigns, We Miss You campaigns, loyalty campaigns there, offering bespoke, let's say voucher codes and coupons, discounts online. And we've really had a big focus on driving ads through digital. We're also definitely making the shift on our side to digital too. So basically we are building a marketplace, and we're enabling third-party sellers to come in and join in on our platform. And we're also, we've turned one of our TV studios into an actual digital studio as well, to really focus on driving traffic through new customers and bringing in the younger generations into a traditional older generation TV home shopping channel.
Was that a strategy already in place prior to COVID, or was it simply accelerated, prioritized?
I think what you're saying, it put the pedal to the metal essentially, and we really saw the effect of this pandemic and doubled down on it.
And guys, what about payment mix? As you for those retailers who've had to switch to online very quickly, obviously the payment mix changes. What have you observed in how retailers have adapted?
If I may, it definitely we've seen a change in retailers, and also in retailers asking us due to the shoppers' preference. In some part of the world, the cash on deliveries is still very much common, and during the COVID, obviously, from various reasons, this has been completely eliminated. We've seen a shift into cards and tokenizing the cards, as Wilco mentioned rightfully, due to loyalty and how to make sure that we are utilizing better the different contact. We've seen also from retailers that want to expand globally an immediate need to expand the different payment methods portfolio that they are accepting these days. If they used to accept mainly cards, if UK or European merchant, then suddenly at once expanding into additional countries, expanding and offering their goods into methods of installments, into methods of get now and pay later. All of those trends have definitely changed into additional payment methods, additional means of payments within the checkout experience.
And Wilk, have you experienced something similar in terms of preference for deferred payments? Is that something you've?
In all honesty, it's obviously the business I'm in. So we've seen an enormous increase from a share of checkout perspective with our merchants. So a lot of consumers have moved from either card payments or any other alternative payment methods to pay later. Also due to the fact that a lot of colleagues in the market are spending a lot of marketing dollars or euros or pounds on attracting consumers. Basically, I think especially during COVID, we've seen an enormous increase in marketing spend, also from these types of partners in the business, in the pay later business. So we have seen an increase in the existing customer portfolio, but also a lot of merchants who urgently wanted to add pay after delivery to their payment mix, because they just simply saw and also got questions from their consumers to see that added to the payment portfolio. Yeah.
What about click and collect and sort of supporting retailers with omni-channel strategies? Have you seen an increase in that trend?
Yeah, from our side, we've been working with click and collect for a while, and it's been a big part of our strategy too. Same thing. What the others mentioned too with deferred payments. I mean, we work with OpenPay, FlexiPay, and we're actually looking at getting into partnerships with other payment methods like Klarna, for example, too. So we're expanding out to get on these newer payment methods as well.
Okay. A question here from the audience coming in, actually, with all this sort of rise in e-commerce, obviously there's been an increase in fraud, dirty traffic. Have you observed that? Has that been the case? And also, I suppose, related to just direct fraud attempts and attacks, also a level of disputed transactions and chargebacks. Have you seen a spike in those kinds of transactions?
Yeah, so if I could take this one too, historically on our side, we've had a fraud rate of around 1.2% normally, and I think during the whole coronavirus outbreak, naturally more sales moving online, more people using deferred payments, and we're starting to see that increase actually to around 1.7. From our side, I was speaking with the CFO actually earlier, and he was saying we're still in collection mode with a lot of it, so it's a bit early for us to tell exactly, and it's difficult to be precise. But we are seeing an increase in fraud, so like moving from 1.2 traditionally to around 1.7.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, retailers who've quickly shifted online have to get comfortable with the additional level of risk of that channel. How can you, as a payment provider, Yuval, support them in this?
Yeah, I think that first of all, to answer the previous question on our end, we haven't seen a significant spike on chargebacks or on fraudulent activity simply because of the pandemic. I think that it's very much related on the specific case of the retailer or the actually, if you're looking at it as a global trend, the fact that the travel and the travel industry has shifted into lower numbers dramatically than might even reduce the overall exposure to chargebacks. But overall, I think that from managing risk, managing fraudulent activity, it's not something that we've learned only during the pandemic. This is the bread and butter of providers such as ourselves. This is where we are coming from. Online is indeed brings with it some sort of risk, and a provider can mitigate those by either the anti-fraud systems, either different methods of selling and verifying the users and understanding the user's behavior. We have done some sort of ongoing training into those retailers that have shifted from offline to online immediately, but the majority of the portfolio, at least on our end, were such that we're familiar with both environments. They just shifted the portion of the transaction, bigger portion of e-commerce rather than offline. So it wasn't the risk and how to handle risk, how to manage and mitigate it wasn't a strange situation for them. They were used to it. Just that the portion within their business has definitely shifted more into the digital and the accelerated.
Yeah, gotcha. And so, Wilco, what are you seeing? I mean, are there any kind of like regional variances in terms of how retailers are coping with the pandemic or adapting to the pandemic?
Yeah. So we do a lot of business also in the Nordics. From country to country, we see differences also in restrictions, right? And I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We also have a bit of a different way of restrictive conditions than for example in Germany or in Belgium. So it differs a little bit country per country. Here in the Netherlands, for example, most stores are open, although consumers not necessarily go back to their normal way of shopping, right? So if you walk down the high streets here, it's still super quiet, I would say. So back to normal, and that's what Yuval also rightly said in his presentation. I think the new normal is that people will work from home more than maybe half of the working week, and mind you, the impact for all little stores, coffee stores, shops, etc., in the business areas, but also the retailers in general selling whatever product in business areas, that will be extremely slow in the near and mid and also maybe longer term. So I think the impact will be very significant, and yeah, we need to find, together with our retailers, we need to find models whereby they can continuously communicate with their consumers, both in a store or a location and online.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to start wrapping up the session, I mean, just a final few questions on that theme in terms of, what you think retailers should be focusing on the short and the long term going forward. What advice would you give to merchants, Yuval?
So on our end, what we do see is that even if you haven't adapted until now to the digital, then definitely start doing so, because as we keep on mentioning here, it doesn't seem like the pandemic is an isolated change of preferences, but those changes are here to stay. More than that, start exploring how to expand your reach, either geography-wise, either product-wise, and how to maintain the user satisfaction and allow the user to transact and to streamline as much as you can the whole flow between shopping experience to payment, allowing them to feel not only secure, but also that their preferences, you recognize, and you maintain their loyalty for the long run.
Interesting. And Ted, are you putting in place any kind of long-term measures as a result of COVID? What's the future?
Yeah. So from us, again, it's really taking a digital foot forward approach to it now. I mean, we're seeing the uptick. I don't think it's going away either. I think a lot of customers who got used to shopping online now, who may have done it, let's say, for the first time, this is the new normal for them, and I think that it will remain that way too. And they're used to using digital platforms, and I think they'll be more comfortable with exploring. I would even say outside of like the traditional ones like Amazon or eBay even, and start going to newer platforms, new marketplaces. And that's where we really want to be. We want to be in that space. We want to be where the younger shoppers are and those older shoppers who may just be going into digital shopping for the first time.
That's an interesting point that you think it could just broaden e-commerce generally out beyond the sort of major marketplaces. And Wilco, just a final comment. What do you think the future holds as a direct result of COVID? Looking out in the next 3 to 5 years, how will the e-commerce landscape change, or the retail landscape change?
Yeah, I think that physical stores will be used more and more for the experience, for the brand experience. I think most of the retailers we talk to on a global level will be focusing and spending more and more even on the mobile experience. I think that the regular e-commerce channel will be prevalent in a few years' time compared to having a lot of stores, right? If you look at the recent developments, the Inditex Group, H&M, all these super large retailers, they closed down more than 1,000 stores per group, right? And they invest billions in their e-com channels. So digitalization will accelerate even more. I think that is super important to also follow for all payment providers, but also all service-orientated companies in the retail space. And I think last but not least, I think Generation Z, So that's millennials plus, right? They will shop in a different way. That is also accelerating fairly fast. Mobile first mentality is super important, but I think that generation has a different view on loyalty, has a different view on paying. They're not really credit card orientated, but more focused on spreading their payments, having more control over their cash flow. I think that is what we will see in the near and midterm future. And I would love to be able to predict the future, but that is how I see it a little bit, right?
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting perspective. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this session. Thank you so much for the panelists and the audience and the questions you've submitted online. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.